How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the 1IQ Sports Talk YouTube channel. Brendan and Sterling coming at you for divisional round playoff game predictions. And this is actually a pretty good weekend of divisional matchups. Obviously, last weekend we had the wild card round, which handful of shocking game outcomes out of this one, ultimately causing some interesting matchups here this week. And the first interesting matchup that we have up on the scoreboard is the Texans going into Kansas City to take on the Chiefs, where the Chiefs are minus 9.5 point favorites.
Yeah, I don't think anybody expected the Texans to be able to pull off a win against the Chargers there, but they managed to. I mean, the Chargers did not look good. Um, but this is a very well rested KC team at this point. They've had something like 18 days of rest because they
24.
rested their players in the final week of the regular season. Didn't have to play wild card weekend, so they're all very well rested, and I think they're gonna come out ready to go. So that 9 point spread that makes sense to me because I think they will. I think we'll see a different Chiefs team. Like all season, they haven't been scoring a lot of points. They haven't been blowing teams out. Now would be the time for them to put the foot on the gas if that's what they intend to do.
Yeah, this is just one of those games where you look at the Chiefs, they've had 24 days since their starters have played meaningful football. Now, again, they played that last game. I think that might have been against the Steelers, was their last meaningful bit of football. And then obviously, they didn't play any of their starters in the final week of the season, where they got blown out by Denver. But at that point, when you're playing basically backup, it doesn't particularly matter. But yeah, this Texans team ultimately shocking the Chargers last week in a game where we were all just kind of looking at it going like we basically said whoever gets the Texans kind of has almost what we assumed was going to be not necessarily a bye week, but the easiest matchup in the wild card round, just because the Texans had just kind of stumbled their way into the playoffs. They weren't playing really good football. They were just one of those teams where like, okay, like yeah, you made it to the playoffs,
Hmm.
great, but thanks for coming. It was the game of 1, 2, 3 Cabo. Like that was what we all thought they were gonna be, and they played really well. And I expect them to have that same level of mentality coming out this week. They're going to rely on Joe Mixon and have CJ Stroud protected as well as he possibly can. And you know for a fact that this Texans edge rushing unit of Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. is going to absolutely just be loving the fact of looking at the tackles they get to go up against this week for the Chiefs. So that defense for the Texans, they could be the real factor in this game, but it's really hard for me to go against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, especially when they're at home and when discounting the last week of the season when they didn't have the starters, the Chiefs have been playing their best football these last 3 weeks when they actually played, and they looked really good. They looked really competitive. Their defense looks good. They were able to shut teams down, and I just have to kind of sit back and go, man, it's really hard to pick against the Chiefs, especially when they've been perfect at home and they've been using black magic all year. So it's, you know, I think the black magic's just simply going to continue.
Yeah, well, and I mean that's why, as good as this Texans defense is, I believe they're a non-factor in this game because those edge rushers, great, they're like easy tackles, but you're not allowed to touch Patrick Mahomes. So we know those tackles are going to be holding and the flags won't be thrown on it. So I don't expect those edge rushers to be able to make an impact on this game. So it really is the KC offense and defense against the Houston offense.
Yeah.
And I just don't think there's going to be enough there. The Chiefs have been really good at pacing themselves, though. So even with that 9 point spread, I think the Chiefs are going to win this. Obviously, at home, like you said, undefeated so far this season. Not going to happen. But I think the Texans will cover that spread because I just don't know if the Chiefs are going to go full throttle and just try to blow a team out right now. I think they'll just get that comfortable touchdown lead or so and then just sort of play with their food at that point.
Yeah. And that 9.5 point spread to me, it's one of those things where I kind of look at it and go, it feels a little rich for this Chiefs team who all year long there's been games where we've just looked at them and said, you should win this by 15 to 20, let alone what you are being favored to win it. And they win it by 1 point type situation. So I do think KC's going to ultimately win this game. But like yourself, I can't really take them on that 9.5 point spread just because it's one of those ones where I go, this Chiefs team just hasn't really done it. They've done it a little bit more over the last few weeks of the year, but this is a tougher matchup. Next up for our 6 o'clock matchup here, it is the Washington Commanders going into Detroit to take on the Lions, where the Lions are minus 8.5 point favorites.
Yeah, I'm sure the Commanders are happy that they didn't have to go into Philadelphia and play the Eagles, but it's not going to be any easier really going into Detroit and Ford Field going up against the Lions. The fans will be a little more accommodating, they'll be kinder. You know, you're not going to get into any knife fights going to Detroit. Well, I
This is
say that
Detroit
and
we're
then I
talking
realized
about.
I was about to say Detroit,
Yeah.
so who knows. But the Lions fans tend to be a little more on the peaceful side just because they've dealt with so many years of brutal agony. And so I don't know, that game last week with the Commanders and the Bucks, I feel like the Commanders got away with one because Baker Mayfield, didn't get All-Star MVP Baker Mayfield. We got almost poopy pants Baker Mayfield, which was disappointing. So it made for a good game, but not the kind of blowout shootout that we were expecting to see from these two teams. Again, this week, I'm sort of expecting to see more of a shootout running gun style. Both these teams like to put their offense on the field and do some special things. Neither one has a particularly impressive defense solely because the Detroit Lions are so banged up running third stringers in a lot of positions. Um, but man, this Lions team, it just feels like this is their year that they're going on this big run. And so much like the Chiefs, it's really hard to pick against them right now.
Yeah, this is just one of those games where I'm, as a fan, a little bit conflicted because I would love to see the Lions get eliminated because that means I have full access for my team to hire Ben Johnson. But the other part of me is going, I don't want to see Jaden Daniels succeed any longer. Like there's that part of me, so I'm kind of conflicted in this moment. But now looking as the analyst portion of this, it's gonna be an interesting game, man, because last week we expected both of these teams for Washington and the Bucks to get a really high score, and it was obviously less than what we initially thought. Like they were up like 55 total, and again, this is 55 and a half for this game. I could easily see both of these two teams putting up high level of points because I would not be shocked to see Ben Johnson and this offense just completely start to empty the bag and go, listen, you've seen what we've done before. And I'm not saying completely empty the bag of all of their tricks, but it's going to be like, we're pulling out the good stuff. It's like
Mhm.
we're starting to pull out the fine china for the meal here tonight. We're not exactly bringing out the wagyu beef, but like we're getting out the fine china. We're starting to settle everything down, and this Commanders defense is just terrible. Marshawn Lattimore has not been amazing for the Commanders since making his way over to the Saints. He looked terrible against Mike Evans last week. We all expected just a fist fight matchup there, and it was Mike Evans basically saying, "Listen, son, I own you. Stop trying." And Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's going to be a big factor. Sam Laporta, they have David Montgomery back, so Sonic and Knuckles are going to be right out there. So, they're going to have the run game going as explosive as ever. It's just going to be one of those matchups where you look at it and go, the Lions defense might not be good enough to slow this Commanders offense down, but you know what this Lions offense can do? They can keep themselves onto the field for 15 plays, just absolutely drain the clock and go score a touchdown every single time that they're doing it. And when you do that, it forces the opponent's offense to start doing riskier things because they know that if their defense can't stop them and get consistent stops, then you're going to have to score really quickly, which means you're going to have to try a lot more. And I think that's ultimately going to be the Commanders' downfall this week.
Yeah, and I mean with how these two defenses are, it would not shock me at all to see this be a zero punt game. both of these teams scoring points on every drive, whether it's touchdown or field goals. Um, but the Lions just have too many more tools in their bag compared to the Commanders at this point. Because I mean, the Commanders really, you got Brian Robinson Jr., who's an all right running back. You know, you've got Zach Ertz, who's an aging tight end outlet. But other than that, it's Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin, and
Yep.
that's kind of it. Whereas at least Jared Goff on the other side, he's got Gibbs out of the backfield. He can hand it to Montgomery. He's got Laporta, St. Brown, Tim Patrick,
Jameson
Jamison,
Williams.
like so many weapons for this Detroit offense to utilize, and I think it's just going to overwhelm that Commanders team, and I do think the Lions are going to come out with the win here. Um, this is a tough spread to take because I do think the Lions win by at least a touchdown. I just don't know if it's going to be by that 9 to 10 points or not. Um, I'm going to take the Lions to cover that spread, even though it's a hefty spread. I just think that the Commanders will run out of gas, and they won't be able to keep up with the high-powered offense of Detroit.
Yeah, I look at this game. I think the Lions and Commanders will be close during the first half of this game, but I think once we get to the second half and this Commanders defense just starts to get tired and beat down and just a little bit more on that, like, okay, like we're down by 14 here at this point, and our offense, like they just couldn't quit. Like it might be a situation of like they drove down the field and missed a field goal, and it's like, oh, okay, we have to go back out there. I think the Lions will win this game, and I think they'll actually win this pretty comfortably. I think we talked a little bit about the Chiefs potentially playing with their food a little bit with the Texans. This is going to be the Lions just going, we're not playing with our food. We're going to eat the meal and then we're going to bounce. Like that
I
is
mean,
kind of the feeling that I have with it.
well, that has been Dan Campbell's MO this year is, get a team down and then he just keeps repeatedly stomping them.
Yeah, it's
And so it wouldn't shock me at all to see the Lions get out ahead and then just keep going full bore.
we're not just gonna kill you. We're gonna dismantle the body afterwards. Like that's kind of been the Lions' mentality. Now moving over to the Sunday games. This one's starting at 1 p.m. The Rams going into Philadelphia to take on the Eagles, where the Eagles are -6.5 points. Favorites, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be interesting because the Rams, as we expected, once the playoffs started, they looked better. They looked like they're a playoff worthy team. But this is the Philadelphia Eagles who have a phenomenal defense, and you've got Jalen Hurts back in there. You've got Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. Like, there's just much like that other game. There's too many weapons for Philadelphia. Yes, the Rams have more. They've got Cooper Kupp, they've got Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, so they can hang for a little while. I just don't know if their defense is quite as good as Philadelphia's. It's young, it has the potential. I just don't know if this is going to be their year up against the Eagles here.
Yeah, this is one of those games where you just instantly look at it and you go, it feels like it's just an easy pick for the Philadelphia Eagles to win this one. But the more that I thought about it this week, I went, the Rams, they're probably the hottest team entering the playoffs right now because they've basically had to do playoffs ever since like week 14 at that point. So they've just been going, going, going. And there's just something about Sean McVay when he has a quarterback that is experienced like Matthew Stafford and the team playing as well as it has. This defense is young. Like, and we saw them kind of take over their game last week where that defense was able to just play really, really good football. And Matthew Stafford, he knows exactly what he needs to do. This Rams team is kind of giving me the last year of Peyton Manning when he was with the Broncos vibes of where it's there. This isn't a perfect team. And now, granted, the Broncos that year had a stellar defense led by Von Miller, and Peyton Manning just kind of stumbled in with the offense. But it kind of has almost that little bit of a reverse effect of where the offense is really good and the defense has some pieces there that are kind of working. I'm not exactly ruling out the Rams in this game. I think this game is going to be a lot closer than we expect because it's not like the Eagles played that well last week. And we watched Jordan Love and the Packers play equally as bad, and they just got banged up, banged up, banged up. And the Eagles, realistically, with how bad the Packers were playing, they should have won that game by 30 points, but
Mhm.
they didn't. It's just because the Eagles just weren't playing that well. And I wonder if that's just Jalen Hurts being a little bit rusty, just coming off from that injury, because I think he was out for what, 3 weeks at that point?
I think it was
2.5?
2 to 3.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
around that time. So coming in rusty a little bit, that, and he wasn't even necessarily cleared until last Wednesday to play. So it's
Mhm.
one of those things. I, however, still think this Eagles team is going to win this game. I think they, without a doubt, are the better team. They are the better unit. It's gonna be tough for me to really just look at this Rams team and go, you have to stop Saquon Barkley, which is already a task on its own. Then if you can stop Saquon Barkley, you have to be able to stop AJ Brown, and then Devontae Smith,
Mhm.
and then Dallas Goedert. There's just so many weapons there. And then you look at the other side of the ball, like what you're saying. They basically have, just name any Georgia Bulldog from those national championship winnings teams. They basically have them, and they're just playing so damn well, even though they have some lackluster head coaching. But Vic Fangio, this is a guy that's kind of had Sean McVay's number over the last couple years as a defensive play caller. And so I do think Philly's going to win this game, but I think it's probably going to be fairly close, and I think the Rams will actually keep it close enough to cover that spread.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the coaches there, and that I think is what this game's going to come down to. Like there's a lot of talent on Philly, I know, but they tend to get in their own way more than anything. And I just, this is one of those games where I feel like if Sean McVay is able to get out in front and out coach Nick Sirianni, then he can frustrate this Eagles team into making mistakes because we've seen Jalen Hurts make mistakes when he starts
Hmm.
getting frustrated with his coach. And I think this is one of those games we could see that happen. I'm taking the Rams to win this game. I think they're going to upset the Eagles, and we're going to go on to see yet another rematch of Rams Lions. Stafford against Goff, and
In
continue that
Ford
debate of
Field.
who won that trade.
Yeah. That's something that we're definitely going to have to talk about once the season's over, just kind of ultimately looking back at that trade, just to kind of go and have a really deep look at it.
I mean, I don't think you can say either one won or lost. I think they both won out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
You
It
know,
is,
they
again,
they
something that we'll have to talk about
yeah.
once the season's over a little bit more. But yeah, I you know, I'm completely with you with that. Like, I could see the Rams winning this game. But for our final game of the weekend, and probably the best game of the entire season, not just the playoffs, but the entire season, we have the Baltimore Ravens heading into Buffalo to take on the Bills, where the Baltimore Ravens are -1 point favorites.
Yeah, I mean, in nice weather, this would be the best game for sure. But considering what the weather forecast is in Buffalo, it's pretty much identical to what the wild card forecast was last season for
Yeah.
Buffalo. The inclement lake effect and high winds, lots of snow. It's
Cold.
exactly. It's going to be nasty, nasty game. I mean, I'm still not even 100% sure if we'll see this Sunday or if it'll get bumped to Monday because of that weather, depending on what happens. It'll be another one of those situations. And so I don't think this game will be as exciting just due to that. Thankfully for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson playing in Baltimore, he is a little more familiar with that cold weather, not too bad with it. Um, Derrick Henry's a little more unfamiliar with that cold weather, so I think this could hinder him. He's a little older as well, so you and I know that cold weather, especially a guy who's got a repaired knee like he does, that cold gets in there and it starts to stiffen up on you. So I don't know. I think we could see the Baltimore Ravens struggle a little bit in this cold, snowy weather in Buffalo.
Yeah, this is without a doubt the coldest game that Lamar Jackson has ever played in his entire career, because they're predicting this game to be 17 degrees American units, Fahrenheit, Celsius, whatever it is.
No.
It's 17 degrees, which is cold as hell. Like I think that's something like -10 for us, which again for
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's not much colder than last week's game in Baltimore was, because
yeah,
last week's game was, I think, 21 degrees. And
yeah,
so it's only a few degrees colder. So at least they got a little bit of experience with it, but there was not nearly as much snow. There was only a little bit of dusting throughout the game last week.
it,
There's
there's a
piles
lot
and
more snow here,
piles
and
in Buffalo right now.
we know Buffalo kind of thrives on this sort of weather. Like this is basically one of their biggest home field advantages is the weather that they basically just practice in and play in, and they're used to it. And we've seen Josh Allen play in these sort of conditions. This is just one of those games where I almost don't really want to make a prediction, where I just kind of want to just sit back, throw my hands up, and just watch, because it's going to be a fun game to watch, because we do have two explosive teams that can do a lot of damage. I don't think the Bills have that great of a secondary. I think it's Kyle Hamilton and Fairless Bueller. Who else is there? No one is there. And so I think the Bills are going to be able to take advantage of that. They've been getting better and better throughout the year. Zay Flowers, I'm not sure if he's actually making this game this particular week, because I know he was injured last week, but even if he is going to be playing this week, he's still going to be playing not decently healthy. But yeah, for the Bills, it's you got to stop Derrick Henry. If you can slow down Derrick Henry, you can easily win this game. But
I mean, that's how every team has beaten the Ravens this year. Is if
yeah,
you can slow down Derrick Henry
you
and
win.
turn Lamar Jackson into what he always was, then you can win the game.
Yeah,
For the most part, there's been a couple games where he takes over, but not with the cold, snowy that we're going to have. I don't think.
yeah.
I mean,
Those
this was
sort
an
of
easy game for me to pick for obvious reasons.
yeah. I know you're picking the Bills. You know, no questions asked. And for me, I think the Bills know they have to stop Derrick Henry, and they've seen if you allow him to get over 50 yards, chances are he's probably going for 160. That's just what Derrick Henry has been able to do these last couple of weeks. I think they know if you slow down Derrick Henry, you win this game, because you have to turn Lamar Jackson back into that quarterback that has to do everything himself. And when we've seen Lamar Jackson do it, he struggled. And I'm still not convinced that Lamar Jackson is necessarily the playoff quarterback that you need to go out there and win. And we've seen Josh Allen compete with Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow, the best of the best for these playoff quarterbacks. And he's just trying to get that last hump. He's trying to continue on his generational year, essentially. And I think Baltimore is going to win. If this was, or not Baltimore, Buffalo is going to win this game. If this was in Baltimore, I would probably give the edge to Baltimore. This is just
Even if
one
the
of
weather
those.
was nicer, I would probably give the edge to Baltimore.
I think home
Like
field
the cold
advantage definitely
climate,
has. Yeah,
adding all that snow and ice to it, I think is what's ultimately gonna shift the tides in the favor of Buffalo.
yeah. No, I agree with you on that. It's just I think if this was in Baltimore, I would. I pretty this is just one of those games where I just feel like it's the home team advantage that's going to allow them to try to walk away with this victory. But since it's such a close game and Baltimore is actually the favorite in this one, I'm taking Buffalo and Buffalo to cover that spread. And obviously, you are also taking the exact
Yeah,
same thing.
yeah, I'm taking Buffalo to win. I will not be picking the Ravens. Like, no, the Ravens can go home. No Super Bowl for you.
One, two,
Come
three,
back one
Cabo.
year.
Yes.
Hmm?
1, 2, 3, Cabo.
Yeah,
That's kind of the hope for that one. But
exactly.
that is our divisional game previews and game predictions. Thank you all very much for watching. Make sure to check out all the other stuff we have coming out this week. We have a bunch of stuff coming out, so make sure to tune in, like and subscribe, and comment for anything you want us to talk about. Peace.